Hey guys, tonight we're slipping you into the itchy wool stockings of a medieval prostitute, because nothing says relaxing bedtime like questionable hygiene and a complete absence of central heating. Don't worry, you'll be home by morning. Though you probably wouldn't survive the week without Wi-Fi, vitamin C, or a basic understanding of where not to dump chamber pots. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. I like picturing all of us scattered across time zones like medieval pilgrims with better blankets. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The very first bell of dawn clangs like a drunk blacksmith, iron notes ricocheting off half-timbered walls until they land, throbbing, behind your eyes. You surface from a dream of modern plumbing into a loft no wider than a coffin, rafters speckled with pigeon graffiti, little white signatures on every beam. A single straw mattress, already protesting, crackles beneath you. The stuffing has rearranged itself into a topographical map of your hips. Yesterday's undershift is still damp in the armpits, but you pull it on anyway, because laundry days are as rare as courteous customers. The air tastes of stale tallow and boiled cabbage drifting up from the alley, a combination that medieval physicians swear opens the humors, though they never specify to what end. Your first task is breakfast, which is a generous term for the heel of rye bread you hid inside your shoe to keep the rats honest. You chew thoughtfully, grains grinding like tiny millstones between your molars, and watch a pigeon attempt to seduce another with a twig. Courtship looks much the same everywhere, hopeful, clumsy, likely to end in disappointment. Somewhere below, the baker's wife screams at her apprentice for burning the manchette loaves. That sound is your daily calendar, more reliable than any church bell. Historians still argue whether average medieval townspeople ate 2 or 3 meals a day. You, like most of your neighbors, aim for 1.5 and call it piety. A sudden draft lifts the hem of your shift, reminding you that privacy is a modern invention. The loft's one shutter swings open to reveal a sky the color of dishwater, streaked rose where the sun tries to bleach last night's sins. You whisper good morning to the city, because no one else will, salve Londinium. Try not to kill me before supper. The cathedral's great bell finishes its tolling, 6 strokes, which means you've overslept by an hour, and the rental of your room just got pricier. Your landlord, Master Corbett, counts time like a tax collector counts coins, greedily and always in his favor. He also claims he can tell a virgin by the way a woman walks, a party trick that impresses no one but still costs you an extra penny when you swagger too confidently. You tuck the crust into your cheek like a hamster and feel around the floorboards for your respectability veil, a scrap of linen you bartered from a pilgrim who swore it once touched St. Winifred's shrine. Whether or not that's true, and scholars debate how many relics were genuine versus clever marketing. The veil grants you temporary invisibility among the devout. You pin it over your hair with a bent brass pin that used to hold a priest's cassock closed, sacred hardware repurposed. The effect is less noble widow than bedsheet after a siege, but it beats the yellow hood regulation requires registered brothel workers to wear. Yellow, the color of betrayal, of Judas, of urine used to fix dye. Nobody looks good in yellow. Footsteps thud on the ladder. Your neighbor Alice, who works the corner by the fish market, pokes her head through the trap door like a gopher checking for hawks. Her eyes are puffed from last night's tears, or possibly from the onions she uses to manufacture them. Authenticity is flexible here. She hisses that the sheriff's men are doing spot inspections today, looking for unlicensed women. You swallow the last of the bread, nearly lodging crumbs in your windpipe. Choking would be one way to avoid arrest, Though not recommended by any medical treatise, Alice offers to swap veils. Hers has fewer holes, but you suspect it carries lice with aristocratic bloodlines. You decline because solidarity has limits, and because you've already named your fleas and don't want territorial disputes. Down the ladder you go, rungs creaking like old confessions. The ground floor tavern is still shuttered, benches upside down on tables like sleeping turtles. A cat blinks at you, then returns to licking its privates with the dedication of a monk illuminating manuscripts. You envy its schedule. Outside, the alley smells of night soil and wet stone. Your clogs slap a rhythm that echoes between walls until it sounds like a parade of you, all of them regretting yesterday. A rat the size of a cannon's purse waddles past, gives you the side-eye, and disappears into a drain historians recently confirmed was built by the Romans and never improved upon. Sometimes progress is just a fancy word for forgetting. At the corner you pause, because the morning breeze carries a snippet of chant from the priory, Media vita in morte sumus. In the midst of life, we are in death cheerful bunch, those monks. The melody threads through your ribs and tugs, a reminder that your profession trades in the life-death. Life wiggle room everyone pretends isn't there. You hum along, adding a descant that turns the phrase into something closer to, in the midst of death we are in life, but quietly, because heresy is yellow. Hood territory. A friar once told you that prostitutes perform a merciful service by keeping married men from worse sins, like adultery with other wives. You asked if that made you a subcontractor for sacraments. He did not laugh, but he did drop 2 extra pennies. Your stomach, unimpressed by philosophy, growls louder than the bell. You turn toward the market, where the day's first coins are changing hands, and where you will spend the next 12 hours converting breath, skin, and invented affection into bread, rent, and maybe a ribbon, if business is kind. Somewhere in the city, a knight is waking, scratching his flea bites, rehearsing the speech about crusading glory he'll use to impress someone younger and less suspicious than his wife. You will meet him, or someone like him, because history isn't just battles and bishops. It's also the quiet transactions in between, the ones that never get carved in stone. But that's hours away. Right now, you walk, veil fluttering like a surrender flag nobody has accepted yet, into the pale heartbeat of a city that has agreed to keep you, provided you keep its secrets. The alley is still yawning when you reach the public wash trough, a long stone basin fed by a lead pipe whose Roman makers would weep at the medieval patch jobs. Ice skim fringes the water. You break it with your elbow, the shock traveling up your arm like a tiny lightning bolt. Your reflection wobbles up at you, eyes ringed with sleep, lips chapped, a breadcrumb freckle on your chin. You wet the corner of your veil and scrub at yesterday's smoke and someone else's clove-scented breath until the linen comes away, the color of weak broth. A monk stands nearby, sleeves rolled, supervising 2 novices filling buckets for the infirmary. His gaze lands on you, the way a gull lands on a fish, deliberate, expectant. You greet him with the Latin you picked from customers, Benedicite, frater, and watch him calculate whether responding will taint his aura. He settles for a curt nod, but the younger monks blush crimson, proving theology and hormones share a saddle. While you wash your armpits as discreetly as a street performer can, the monk launches into an impromptu sermon on the sin of vanity, voice echoing off the walls like a badly thrown stone. You consider pointing out that his own robe is edged with fur squirrel, by the look, but decide against starting a theological duel before breakfast. Instead, you flip your wet hair forward, drenching the front of your shift, and wring it out so water streams onto the cobbles in the shape of a small, repentant river. Scholars still argue whether public bathing increased or decreased after the Black Death. You'd vote decreased, judging by the way even the water seems nervous. A passing housewife hisses that decent women wait until after prime, implying you are either indecent or a time traveler from a more secular hour. You curtsy so deeply your knee grazes something unspeakable, then rise smiling, because sarcasm is free and soap isn't. The monk's novices sneak glances while you splash under your arms, probably cataloging sins for evening confession. You consider giving them something worth the parchment, a wink perhaps, or a Shakespearean sigh centuries early. Instead, you borrow a trick from Alice and bite the inside of your cheek to produce a tear. Nothing terrifies the devout, like the possibility you might be penitent. It works. The monk hurries his charges along, buckets sloshing holy water that will later be used to boil lentils, completing the circle of earthly and divine. You're left alone with the trough, a growing pile of laundry belonging to no one in particular, and the smell of wood smoke drifting from a bakery chimney. Somewhere inside your chest, a small, stubborn cleanliness preens. You may sell the use of your body, but you still own the smell of your own skin when it's just washed. Drying options are limited. You settle for flapping your arms like a mediocre falcon until the linen stops dripping, then drape the veil over one shoulder where it can dry against your body heat. The motion attracts the attention of a stray dog with ribs like barrel staves. It eyes you, calculating odds. You tear the remaining bread crust in half. Charity is easier when breakfast was free, and toss it. The dog wolfs it down, then follows you at a polite distance. New best friend or unpaid bodyguard, hard to say. Animals understand transactions, food, warmth, occasional ear scratch, no moral arithmetic required. You name him Brother Ribs, in honor of the monks and resolve to share future leftovers, assuming there are any. Next comes perfume, because even medieval customers appreciate plausible deniability in the form of flowers. You uncork a tiny vial. Lavender oil bought from a Flemish peddler who swore the blossoms were picked by virgins under a full moon. The scent is closer to old hay, but you dab it behind each ear anyway, then on the inside of each wrist, practicing a half-remembered gesture you saw on a noble lady. Historians love to debate whether commoners coveted aristocratic fashion. You're living proof that imitation is the sincerest form of surviving. The dog sneezes, unimpressed. You consider investing in rosewater if today's earnings allow, though rosewater costs the same as 2 bowls of pottage and doesn't feed the living. A bell begins to toll, this time from the parish church, faster, urgent. You freeze, counting strokes, 9, 10, 11. That pattern means fire, or sometimes a death in the street. People spill from doorways like beans from a torn sack, everyone asking questions nobody can answer yet. You grab your bucket, because showing up empty-handed is bad optics, and jog toward the sound, dog at heel. The irony isn't lost on you. One moment you're perfuming pulse points, the next you're volunteering for disaster relief. Medieval life is a juggler who keeps adding chainsaws. As you round the corner, you see smoke twisting above the rooftops, a gray banner waved by an invisible herald. Somewhere beneath it, someone's morning has gone worse than yours, and for a second that feels almost like comfort, though you know you'll repent the thought later when you're scrubbing soot from your skirt hem with cold urine, the period's all-purpose solvent. But that's later. Right now you run, veil streaming behind you like a prayer flag nobody has blessed, toward the clangor and the heat and the communal uncertainty that passes, in this century, for civic life. By the time you reach the marketplace, the smoke has thinned to a nervous ribbon. Someone's stall simply got too enthusiastic about roasting chestnuts, nothing requiring your newly acquired bucket. You set it down anyway, pretending you merely stopped to rearrange your footwear, while the dog, Brother Ribs, pants approval. Around you, the market reassembles itself like a dropped necklace scooped off the floor, threads of people restringing into rows. Fishwives slap silver herrings onto boards, each smack a small maritime execution. A spice merchant with a face the color of saffron bellows that his pepper was personally blessed by the Cardinal of Avignon, which seems unlikely given that the Cardinal currently owes money to half the taverns in town. You drift past, letting the crowd push you where it wants, because crowds are medieval Uber, unpredictable, occasionally violent, but they know the route better than you do. Your nose guides you to the fish market's far end, where the catch of the day steams in the cold literal steam, because fish here are sold so fresh they're still negotiating their fate. Alice once claimed she saw a cod wink at a customer. You told her, cod are Protestants and don't believe in flirting. Today the cod are ominously still, probably resigned. You bargain for one, trading a quick kiss on the cheek. No tongue, this is daylight, and a promise to mention the fishmonger's generosity to certain gentlemen. The herring you receive is small but firm, its eye clear as a monk's conscience before lunch. You wrap it in a scrap of parchment that once listed the city's plague regulations. The ink has run, but you're pretty sure avoid breathing near strangers was never official policy, just good sense. With protein secured, you angle toward the bread line where the town's charity distributes yesterday's leftovers to anyone who can produce a mournful expression. You've rehearsed yours, lips slightly parted, eyes unfocused, the look of someone remembering every sin plus interest. It works. The steward drops a coarse loaf into your hands so hard it bruises your palm. Bread and fish, scented parchment, medieval surf, and turf. Brother Ribs eyes the loaf. You tear him the crust, earning a thump of his tail against your shin that echoes like a drumstick on hide. Around you, other women queue, widows in respectable gray, a laundress whose hands are raw from lye, 2 girls from the licensed stew house wearing their mandated yellow hoods like cautionary halos. You nod. They nod back, professional courtesy crossing social barbed wire. While you chew, you catch snippets of gossip that function as CNN with worse teeth. A pilgrim bound for Canterbury has vanished. Last seen buying fake relics from a one-eyed vendor. Some say he ran off with the money. Others whisper Saracens kidnapped him, which is geographically ambitious for Kent. You store the tale for later. Customers love a story, especially if you embroider it with imaginary dangers you personally survived. Scholars still debate how news traveled so fast without print. The answer is simple. Boredom plus breadlines equals fiber optic mouths. You contribute that you heard the missing man dallied with a Flemish lace seller, inventing details so vivid you half believe them yourself. By the time the loaf is gone, half the queue believes it too, and you feel a pang of guilt for the lace seller, whoever she is. Coins clink heavier in purses now. The market's heartbeat quickens. You spot a knight servant buying bolts of cloth, scarlet and miniver, his master preparing to ride north where rebellion smolders against the king. The servant's eyes flick over you, catalog your veil, your hips, your market-stained fingers, then move on without recognition. That's fine. Anonymity is a currency you hoard. Still, you make a mental note of the knight's colors, a black boar on gold. If he survives the campaign, he'll return with stories, adrenaline, and pain needing laundering through wine, dice, and you. History remembers Agincourt, but forgets the bedrooms that finance the armor. You intend to be one of those bedrooms, quietly, profitably. A sudden commotion near the poultry crates. Someone's stolen a goose, and the bird is now airborne, honking like a demonic herald. People duck, feathers swirl like incompetent snow. You laugh so hard, the herring slides in your sleeve, and for a moment, the city feels less like a trap, and more like a stage where chaos writes the script. Then you notice the sheriff's men arriving, clubs out, looking for someone to blame. You melt sideways behind a tapestry stall, dog in tow, heart tapping a sailor's jig against your ribs. They won't care about your veil if they need a quick arrest. Unlicensed women are convenient scapegoats, like Jews during well-poisoning scares or cats when weather misbehaves. You breathe through your mouth, count to 5, and slip into the slow-moving river of shoppers heading toward the church porch where sanctuary smells of incense and plausible deniability. The church porch is already crowded with the usual petitioners, a farmer whose pig still looks pregnant after 3 supposed farrowings, a pair of guild brothers arguing over a warped barrel stave, and a widow clutching a chicken like a feathered valise. You slide between them, adjusting your veil so the hem covers the fish head peeking from your sleeve. The limestone pillars are cool against your back. Their carved saints glare downward, faces softened by centuries of acid breath and pigeon pedicures. Somewhere inside, the priest is reciting the end of prime, Latin syllables spilling out the doorway like polite coins. You wait for the lull, rehearsing your line. Alms for a poor widow, good sir, delivered in a tone pitched halfway between piety and flirtation. It's a delicate recipe. Too much piety and you starve, too much flirtation, and you're back in the morality court. A clerk appears, ink-stained fingers drumming on the parchment roll that doubles as his authority. He's young, peach fuzz, glowing where the sun sneaks through. You catch his eye, offer the single penny you earned yesterday for holding a stranger's horse while he vomited. The penny buys you a name on the parish charity list: Alice, widow of Thomas the Cordwainer, a fiction sturdy enough to lean on. Historians still argue whether such lists were social safety nets or bureaucratic fishing lures. You only know your bread ration rises from half to 3/4 if your husband's death can be corroborated by a goose quill. The clerk hesitates, glances at your veil, then at the faint lavender oil still clinging to your collar. You hold your breath. Finally, he shrugs, proof that even churchmen can calculate the cost of curiosity, and scribbles the entry. The ink smells sharp, like a promise that hasn't decided whether to break. Inside, the nave is a forest of shadows and candle spit. You slip through, genuflect by habit, letting your fingertips brush the marble floor so cold it feels wet. A side altar dedicated to St. Nicholas, patron of sailors, thieves, and the otherwise desperate, catches your eye. Someone has left a wooden ship no bigger than your thumb, propped against the base. You add your herring, laying it parallel to the vessel so it looks like a bizarre nautical miracle. A prayer forms without permission. Keep me afloat. Keep me salted. Keep me unsinkable. You're never sure which saint answers, if any, but the act of asking steadies your knees. Medieval theology is less a ladder to heaven than a series of negotiated bribes, and you're always willing to pay in fish. Emerging, you nearly collide with the one-eyed relic seller who's been hawking bits of the true cross since Easter. Today he's branched out, a thumbnail-sized bone shard allegedly from St. Ursula's pinky, displayed on velvet the color of bruise. He winks, his remaining eye bright as a candle stub, and offers you a pilgrim's discount. You counter with a story. The missing Canterbury pilgrim was last seen buying exactly such a relic, and now the sheriff is asking questions. The man's face folds like a bad tent. He pockets the bone and melts into the crowd. You feel a twinge of guilt for inventing trouble, then remember he probably invented the saint as well. Scholars still debate how many thousands of splinters from the true cross circulated Europe. You've just contributed one less. Back on the steps you spot Brother Ribs gnawing someone's discarded palm frond left over from yesterday's procession, still smelling of holiness and donkey. You whistle. He trots over, tail wagging like a metronome set to allegro. Together you descend into the square, where the morning's panic has settled into the usual mercantile hum. Somewhere in that hum waits your next customer, or maybe just your next meal, the two often indistinguishable. You adjust the veil, check that the parchment bread is secure under your belt, and angle toward the street where tailors display their bright wares. A new sleeve, a quick mend, a splash of color, small upgrades that whisper respectability. Those are today's practical miracles. Behind you, the church bell begins to ring, terce, tinny and triumphant, as if it approves of your negotiated sanctity. You don't look back. Forward is the only direction that pays. The tailor shop is a narrow throat between two stone houses, its doorway draped with a strip of indigo cloth faded by summers and pipe smoke. Inside, bolts lean like tired soldiers against walls that smell of linoleum and old sweat. Master Tailor Gilles, bald as a pigeon egg, but still proud of the fringe that dances when he talks, greets you with the familiarity of someone who has measured your inseam for 3 different identities. Today he's mending a sleeve torn in what he calls a regrettable tavern discussion, which means a dice game ended with someone's honor and clothing in shreds. The sleeve belongs to a regular client of yours, a notary who likes to pretend he's read books you know don't exist yet. You examine the rip, 4 inches, clean, probably a dagger tip rather than honorable wear. Medieval laundry marks tell stories historians strain to decode. You read them like penny ballads. Gilles quotes you a price that could buy 2 chickens or 1 modest sin. You counter by promising to mention his craftsmanship to certain ladies who entertain the alderman, a currency he values higher than coin. He nods, hands you scarlet silk thread so bright it looks guilty of something, and points you to the back room where the light is better and the distractions fewer. You settle onto a 3-legged stool, the dog flopping across your feet like a living draft excluder, needle in hand. You begin the tiny stitches that will hide the wound in the fabric. Each push of the needle is a heartbeat. In, out, survive. The rhythm steadies you. For a quarter hour, you are just a woman sewing, not a woman surviving. Scholars debate whether embroidery was therapeutic for medieval women. You'd testify, if anyone asked. That thread is cheaper than confession and twice as forgiving. While you work, Gilles entertains you with gossip. The Earl's son has commissioned a cloak lined with squirrel bellies, ostentatious even by mercenary standards. You file the tidbit away. Nobles in spending moods sometimes scatter coins like breadcrumbs, and you're happy to play bird. The tailor himself is married to a woman who doesn't understand business, which you translate as doesn't understand his wandering tape measure. You murmur sympathy, though you've met the wife. She understands plenty, including where to position a frying pan for maximum contrition. Marriage, you decide, is a guild nobody lets you join, probably because your apprenticeship years were spent in a different curriculum. Still, you enjoy the domestic theater from a safe distance, the way people enjoy bear pits, thrilling, provided the bear stays chained. Halfway through the mend, you notice a smear on the cuff wax, red wax, the kind used to seal important documents. Curiosity nudges. You scrape a little with your fingernail, pocket it. Maybe the notary was authenticating something after the fight. Maybe the fight was about the document. Either way, information is a spice more valuable than pepper these days. You embroider a tiny extra flower over the stain, so no one will notice the fabric is thinner there. Camouflage dressed as decoration. Medieval document forgery is a growth industry. You've just planted a seed you might harvest later. Historians still argue how many legal records were altered by bribes of wine and flesh. You are contributing thread and rumor, small currencies but negotiable. Gilles returns as you knot the final stitch, tests the seam with a tub that would shame a sailor, and grunts approval. You slip the sleeve onto a wooden form so the customer can collect it anonymously. He'll pay Gilles. Gilles will pay you a cut, and everyone pretends the transaction smells of commerce rather than compromise. For your fee, you receive 2 silver pennies and a snippet of sky blue linen, too small for any respectable garment, but perfect for lining a purse. Something to tempt future fingers away from your own. You tuck it inside your bodice, where body heat will smooth the creases and maybe, just maybe, dye it with hope. Outside, the sun has climbed high enough to gild the gutter grime. You step back into the flow, dog at heel, sleeve delivered, secret wax tucked like a promise beneath yesterday's herring bones. The meat pie stall exhales a cloud of pepper and pork fat, so thick you could butter bread with it. You buy a pie the size of your fist, crust blistered like a sunburned pilgrim, and carry it to the communal bench outside the tanner's empty shop. The bench is warm from someone else's bottom, a small mercy in a world that rarely offers seat cushions. Brother Ribs parks himself on your feet, chin on your ankle, eyes fixed on every flake of pastry you transport to your mouth. You give him the first bite, because guilt tastes better when shared. Around you, conversations cross-pollinate. A brewer's wife brags. Her ale is so strong, it resurrected a drowned rat. A mason claims the king's new palace will have glass windows you can see through both ways. An idea so preposterous, you nearly choke on mince. Historians still debate when clear window glass became common. You file the mason's boast under probably drunk, possibly prophetic. Between bites, you listen for useful crumbs. The woman beside you, face powdered with oat dust, whispers that her husband trades relics on the side. Apparently, there's a whole guild of pardoners franchising salvation like alehouses. She lowers her voice. One finger bone of St. Blaise sells for more than a year's rent, and nobody can prove it isn't his, because who remembers a saint's phalange count? You murmur awe, thinking of the wax scrap in your pouch, wondering if it sealed permission to move relics or maybe to forge them. Information, unlike pie, doesn't spoil in your pocket. You offer her a corner of crust, she accepts, and suddenly you're 2 wives of missing traders commiserating over flaky fraud. She invites you to a devotional gathering, next week code you suspect, for clandestine auction of holy leftovers. You promise to attend, already rehearsing how to appear devout and spendthrift at once. Across the lane, the stonemason's wife you met yesterday spots you and waves. She bustles over, chicken tucked under her arm like a feathery reticule, and launches into a tale about her neighbor's daughter, whose fits were cured by touching a splinter from the true cross. You nod solemnly, noting the chicken's eyes, same cloudy devotion. She asks if you've heard the one about the bishop's bastard born with a birthmark shaped like Canterbury Cathedral. You counter with the Vanished Pilgrim, embroidered version, now featuring a one-eyed kidnapper and a sack of fake bones. Gasps all around. Nothing bonds strangers like shared outrage over imaginary crimes. Medieval rumor mills grind faster than water wheels, and you've just tossed in fresh grist. Scholars call it fama, the informal network that policed medieval society. You call it marketing. Pie finished, you lick gravy from your thumb and stand to leave. The mason's wife presses a packet of dried rosemary into your hand. For remembrance, she says, though you suspect she grows it on the grave of her first husband, a man whose absence funds her current generosity. You tuck the herb behind your ear, scent lifting like a tiny garden. The bench crowd disperses, each member richer in gossip, poorer in coin, the medieval equation. You feel the grease settling in your stomach, a warm anchor against the afternoon's unknowns. Somewhere a bell strikes the half. You've an hour before the notary collects his mended sleeve and maybe wants conversation priced by the quarter. You wipe your mouth on the back of your hand, check that the dog hasn't adopted a second owner, and angle toward the lane that smells of heated iron, because a bathhouse looms, its chimney coughing steam like a dragon with consumption, and you've decided you'd like to smell more like rosemary and less like pork before commerce resumes. The bathhouse door is low enough that even you duck, a timber mouth swallowing customers into fog, thick as priestly incense and twice as honest. Inside, the air tastes of birch smoke and communal secrets, steam beads on your lashes like tiny glass rosaries. The attendant, a woman broad as a cathedral pier, greets you by the honorific cousin, which here means anyone willing to pay a farthing for warmth. You hand over 2 herring scales masquerading as coins. She bites one, shrugs, and waves you toward the communal tub, a wooden cradle big enough to baptize a horse. 3 merchants already lounge there, bellies bobbing like risen loaves. You undress behind a screen patched so many times it's more mend than cloth. Fold your clothes into a bundle that Brother Ribs promptly sits on, claiming fiduciary guardianship. Nakedness is currency you spend carefully, but steam levels social hierarchies faster than a bishop's blessing. Sliding into the water, you greet the merchants with a nod. One gives equals in vulnerability. They're discussing the latest papal bull, which apparently forbade Christians from bathing with Jews, though nobody can remember why. One spice merchant eyes, the color of cardamom, claims the prohibition boosts his sales because now everyone wants extra perfume to mask interfaith guilt. Historians still argue whether medieval bathing declined because of moral panic or plumbing decay. You'd vote both, stirred by hypocrisy and served hot. You float your rosemary sprig on the surface, let the heat coax out its piney ghost. The merchants inhale appreciatively, and one offers to buy the herb for double what you paid for the pie. You decline. Sometimes sentiment is worth more than silver, especially when it disguises your identity as a woman who eats at benches rather than tables. Conversation drifts to the price of pepper, then to rumors of plague ships glimpsed off Marseille. The cardamom-eyed merchant lowers his voice. Captains are throwing cargo overboard to lighten hulls, which means soon pepper will cost its weight in silk. You store the intel, wondering if you should stockpile now and sell later, assuming you live till later. Medieval markets run on anxiety, the way mills run on water. You ask where he heard this. He says a Genoese sailor told him in a tavern while sharing a whore who quoted Leviticus. Details meant to add credibility. You pictured the sailor's rash visible last night and decide to avoid Genoese docks for the foreseeable future. Information, like bathwater, grows murkier the more bodies soak in it. Time to scrub. You borrow a strigil bronze, shaped like a tongue, and scrape skin until it pinkens, watching tiny hairs swirl away like fleeing villagers. A merchant asks about your trade. You say you sew, which is true enough to sound honest. He laments that his wife's maid tore his best chemise. You offer to mend it for half what the tailor charges, provided he brings it tomorrow. Deal struck underwater, sealed with a handshake that's more risk than virtue. You've just turned bathhouse steam into a business meeting, proving commerce can bloom anywhere there's sweat and negotiation. Scholars call the medieval economy fragmented, you call it opportunistic. Pruning complete, you climb out before the water cools and your competitors start pricing your services. The attendant wraps you in a rough sheet already holding the warmth of previous bodies, communal affection by proxy. You dress quickly, veil adhering to damp hair like a repentant thought. The merchants depart still arguing about pepper futures, leaving the tub to a pair of nuns who eye the fog as if expecting demons to surface. You tip the attendant the remaining rosemary, receive a blessing that smells of fish and smoke, and step back into daylight. The city hits you like cold water in reverse, sharp, bright, immediate. Somewhere a bell tolls. None. The notary will want his sleeve soon, and you still need to eat the second half of your bread before it petrifies into archaeological evidence. You whistle for the dog, who emerges from beneath the bench wearing a collar of soap bubbles like clerical lace, and together you head toward the street where performers juggle knives and reputations with equal abandon. The street opens into a small square where a juggler keeps 3 knives airborne, their blades catching sunlight like silver fish leaping upstream. A dozen spectators form a loose circle, coins clinking in hats already on the ground. Medieval crowdfunding. You arrive just as the juggler adds a 4th knife, handle wrapped in red ribbon to signify danger or maybe brand loyalty. Brother Ribs sits, Kung lolling, convinced this is elaborate fetch. You lean against a stone water, but feeling the bathhouse warmth still tucked under your skin like a secret layer of clothing. The juggler's patter is a stew of brag and prayer. Ladies and lords, behold the wrath of angels translated into cutlery. You're not sure angels eat, but the crowd laughs, so theology bends for entertainment. Historians still argue whether street performers spread news faster than town criers. Watching faces glow, you'd bet on the man with knives and a smile. Between tosses, he shouts headlines: the Duke's tax on windows, the baker's runaway daughter, the pilgrim who vanished with relics stuffed down his pants. Each tale is punctuated by a blade spinning inches from his nose, proof that danger authenticates gossip. You listen for anything you can repackage later. Customers enjoy feeling informed while their hands are busy. A woman beside you whispers the juggler is former gentry, ruined by gambling, now reduced to entertaining people he once taxed. You study his shoes, worn but originally fine, supporting the myth. Medieval society loves a fall from grace almost as much as a rise from ashes. Both narratives sell ale and sympathy. You flip a clipped penny into the hat, aiming so it lands edge up, a tiny act of superstition. The juggler meets your eye mid-flip, winks. You've been catalogued as generous, possibly gullible, useful. Performance over, hats collected, crowd dispersing like breath on glass. The juggler approaches, wiping sweat with the red ribbon. He asks if you know a cheap bed for the night. You counter by asking if he juggles letters as well as knives. Maybe forge a document vouching you as a merchant's widow. He laughs, produces a deck of painted cards, fans them one-handed, saints on one side, sins on the other, offers to tell your fortune. You pick St. Bridget, hoping for domestic competence. You draw lust, reversed, which he claims means profit without scandal. Sounds like a business plan. He palms the card so smoothly it vanishes, then reappears behind your ear, warm as fresh gossip. You're impressed despite yourself. Sleight of hand is cousin to the small vanishings you perform daily. Scholars call such entertainments liminal, blurring moral edges. You call them rehearsal. Conversation turns practical. He mentions a tavern where performers sleep in the hayloft free if they entertain the landlord at supper. You consider joining. Your sewing story could use embellishment. But remember, the notary expects his sleeve by dusk. You settle for trading intel. You tell him about the sheriff's spot inspections. He tells you which city gate is watched, least after curfew. Barter complete. You both check the other's palms for extra coins. Find none. Part with mutual tips of imaginary hats. Brotherhood among the precarious is stitched from such threads. News, jokes, shared suspicion of stability. You whistle for Brother Ribs, who's been flirting with a poodle wearing a velvet jacket, and head toward the lane where clients leave messages chalked on doorposts, a star for cash in hand, a cross for priest inside. Knock quietly, a triangle for haggle, but don't waste time. Today's post is a crude moon night work requested, payment in foreign coin. You memorize the door, wipe the mark before a competitor sees, and feel the day tilt toward evening, knives now sheathed but still glinting in your mind. The door with the chalk moon belongs to a skinny timber house, wedged between a silversmith's workshop and a chandlery that smells of tallow and high finance. You tap twice, pause, tap once, the rhythm you agreed on last month with the tenant inside. Footsteps shuffle, a bolt slides, and the notary appears, spectacles fogged and forehead shining like a second, smaller moon. He ushers you in quickly, as if the street might audit his free time. The room is monk spare, table, stool, stack of ledgers, bed curtained in fading green wool that once matched his eyes, before sleeplessness drained the pigment. You produce the mended sleeve from your pouch. He examines the seam like it contains scripture, then nods, relieved. Payment first. He's learned courtesy costs extra after services rendered. He hands you a Florentine florin, wider than any English coin, its edges clipped by generations of money changers. You bite it anyway, taste the metallic tang of someone else's empire. While he changes into the doublet you mended, you glance at the open ledger. Columns of names, rents, tithes, and beside several entries, tiny crosses inked in red. You can't read Latin fast, but you recognize the pattern. Debts transferred to the church, probably for indulgences. Medieval credit systems run on sin and collateral. You've just stepped into both. He catches you looking, closes the book with a soft thud that sounds like a verdict, offers you wine cheap, vinegary, served in a cup shaped like a pomegranate. You sip, because refusal implies moral judgment, and judgment is bad for repeat business. Conversation starts safe, weather, the price of scribes, the king's latest fit of piety. Then he drifts toward confessional, insomnia, nightmares of damnation, a wife who spends more on rosaries than bread. You listen, nodding at pauses the way you learned from priests. Silence as invitation. Historians still debate whether notaries were clergy-lite or early bureaucrats. Tonight he feels like both, and neither is paying your rent. He asks if you ever fear hell. You consider telling him about the loft with the leaky thatch, the fleas that swarm like tiny black prayers, the customer who pays in lead coins painted silver. Those feel closer to hell than any afterlife. Instead, you quote St. Augustine, badly, "Give me chastity, but not yet." He laughs, surprised. You know Latin, however crooked. The laugh loosens his shoulders. He reaches inside the green curtain, withdraws a small wooden box, opens it. Pearl earrings, obviously stolen from someone higher up the food chain. Would you wear them just for tonight? He asks. Not keep them. He isn't reckless. Just model so he can imagine purity adorned. You weigh risks. Pearls are traceable, but the room is dim, and you can hide them in your hair long enough to placate his fantasy. You agree for a second florin. He fastens them himself, fingers trembling against your lobes like nervous birds. The pearls are cold, heavier than you expected. Tiny moons mirroring the chalk mark that led you here. Fantasy satisfied, he wants conversation, priced by the quarter hour, payable in stories, not coins. You tell him about the bathhouse merchants, the juggler who predicts futures with saints and sins, the fish you traded for a kiss. You edit out the wax scrap, the rosemary, the dog. He listens like a child at bedtime, eyes wide, candlelight flickering across lenses so thick they magnify his pupils into black lakes. When the bell of nearby St. Dunstan strikes 7, he startles, remembers a meeting with the archdeacon, pays you the second florin plus a stamped token, good for one indulgence. Should you ever need to erase excess of commerce, he jokes. You pocket it, thinking indulgences are the original gift card, versatile, impersonal, rarely redeemed for face value. You remove the pearls, return them to their box, and leave him folding the green curtain as if trying to hide the outline of his loneliness. Back in the street, the air smells of tallow turning to evening, and you feel the foreign coin warm against your thigh, already planning where to change it without questions. Back outside, the lane smells of hot iron and baker's dusk, that yeasty hour when bread gives up its last sigh. You slip the notary's token into your pouch alongside the wax scrap, creating a jingling rosary of sin and absolution. Brother Ribs sniffs the change in your pocket as if assessing foreign metal by diet alone. The city's bells begin their competing evensongs, one clanging early like an impatient drunk, the other lagging as if translating from Latin in real time. You count strokes. 8, and realize you've missed supper in the loft, which is less a meal than a theoretical concept anyway. Instead, you buy a hot roll from a vendor who swears the flour was milled by a blind monk, guaranteeing humility in every crumb. You eat while walking, steam fogging your vision, the roll's crust cracking like thin ice over soft snow. Medieval dietary tracts warn against eating too hot. But caution is a luxury you left in the bathhouse. Foot traffic thickens toward the bridge where curfew crowds negotiate passage before the gates slam. You're not ready to return to the loft yet. The notary's florin needs laundering into smaller, less traceable coins. And the safest method is small wagers in a tavern where questions cost extra. You aim for the sign of the Crooked Crozier, a den the sheriff's men avoid because the landlord keeps better records than the city clerk. On your way, you pass a friar preaching against the pestilence of lascivious dress, gesturing at a woman whose only visible sin is a yellow hood, mandated ironically by the same council that hired him. She glares. He increases volume. You drop the remaining rosemary into her pouch as consolation. Historians still debate whether sumptuary laws controlled class or morality. You know they mainly control scapegoats. Inside the tavern, smoke lies chest high like fog on a battlefield. You spot the dice corner, low stakes, loud laughter, perfect for breaking a florin into innocuous silver. A sailor with a beard full of salt crystals invites you to sit. His companions shift, recognizing competition, but unsure of your threat level. You buy a round with the notary's coin, receive change in local pennies, plus a tale of plague ships off Marseille. Same rumor, spicier details, rats dancing gangplanks, sailors bleeding black tears. You wonder if the cardamom-eyed merchant and this sailor drink from the same imaginary keg. While dice roll you nurse-watered ale, lose just enough to seem unlucky, win just enough to walk away with pockets jingling like a chapel purse. The sailor tries to bargain for more than dice, offers silk from Alexandria, smells of camel and ambition. You defer, claiming a jealous husband waiting. Invention comes easier than rejection. Leaving, you notice a pilgrim badge vendor packing unsold pewter tokens, tiny ampulli, miniature shoes, phallic bells that jingle obscenely. He complains. Sales are down since the vanished Canterbury Pilgrim story spread. Seems people prefer relics you can't lose in a gutter. You buy a cheap badge shaped like a cockleshell, symbol of St. James, and pin it inside your veil. Instant respectability for a penny, portable and pickpocket-proof. Medieval identity is layers you can swap faster than husbands, provided you remember which layer is lies. Outside, the bridge bell tolls 9. Gates will close at 10. You've an hour to cross or find a loophole. You choose loophole, the tanner's side gate where the watchman owes you for distracting a creditor last winter. You whistle. Brother Rebs away from a tavern dog twice his size, and together you angle toward the wall's shadow, pockets lighter but conscience clear enough to pass inspection. Somewhere behind you, the tavern laugh swells. Ahead, the city exhales curfew like a smoker putting out a pipe. Slow, reluctant, final. The tanner's gate is less a gate than a splintery postern that sighs when shoved, exhaling the sour memory of hides and urine. The watchman, Watt, lounges against it, helmet askew, picking his teeth with the broken spine of a Psalter page, scripture repurposed as dental hygiene. You greet him with the nickname only his mother uses. He straightens, guilt flickering like a candle in wind. Brother Ribs wags diplomatically. You remind Watt of the creditor you delayed by pretending to be his long-lost sister, freshly widowed performance art that saved him a broken arm. He grumbles that memory is cheaper than coin, but lifts the latch, gesturing you through with a bow so deep it mocks itself. Historians still argue whether city walls kept enemies out or taxpayers in. Tonight they keep you from sleeping on the wrong side of jurisdiction. Outside the walls, the Thames breathes cold fog that smells of salt and slaughterhouse runoff. Southwark stews glow ahead, oil lamps flung across marshland like fallen stars. You're legal here technically. The Bishop of Winchester licenses the brothels, claiming rents finance. Hospital of St. Thomas, though everyone knows the hospital gets the scraps. The path is planks laid over mud. One wrong step, and the city sucks you to the knee. You tread carefully, humming the juggler's tune about angels and cutlery, replacing blades with coins in your mind. A ferryman pulls toward you, his boat barely longer than a coffin, but wider than Watt's sense of duty. He grins through teeth like broken battlement, familiar, reliable, extortionate. Evening fare, mistress, double for the cur, he says, nodding at Brother Ribs, who growls low, insulted by commerce. You haggle him down to time, and a half by promising news of plague ships and pepper prices. Information doubles as coins south of the river. Mid-crossing, the ferryman brags he once carried the vanished pilgrim, claims the man paid with a fake relic, a thorn from the crown of thorns, that turned out to be catclaw. You laugh. File the detail. Maybe the pilgrim's still trading counterfeit piety somewhere upstream or downstream, depending on tide and gullibility. The boat scrapes shale. You step onto Southwark mud, shoes instantly heavier by a pound of river. Ahead, the stew houses exude lute music and onion smoke, competing for the same clientele. You choose the cardinal's hat, not the nicest, but the landlord waters wine only on saints' days and lets women store belongings free if they dance during supper. Inside, the hearth is large enough to roast an ideology. Benches groan under soldiers, sailors, and the occasional clerk pretending he's slumming. You find a stool. Order watered wine anyway. Tonight caution tastes better than profit. A fiddler launches into a saltarello. Couples stamp rhythms that shake rafters and conscience alike. You rest your feet, dog under stool, and feel the city's pulse migrate south of the river where rules relax like unlaced stays. Somewhere in this haze waits tomorrow's rent, tomorrow's story, maybe tomorrow's rash. But for now, the room is warm, the wine is purple, and even exhaustion can be leased by the hour. The fiddler's bow saws a tune fast enough to stitch soles to floorboards, and you tap a clog against the rushes, counting beats like coins. A serving girl with cheeks glazed by hearth heat brings you a second cup. You pay with one of the local pennies won at dice, plus the ferryman's rumor about pepper prices. She pockets both, because gossip here tips better than cash. Across the room, a man in merchant's crimson watches you, fingers strumming the table's knife-scarred maple. His beard is oiled to a needlepoint, a style that screams either wealth or overcompensation. You're betting on both. When he stands, you notice the chain around his neck. Tiny links, each stamped with a castle sigil of the staplers, exporters of wool to Calais. Big fish, warm water. He approaches, asks if your dog bites. You reply only creditors, which earns a merchant's laugh. Short, efficient, already calculating exchange rates. He introduces himself as Master Aldridge, speaks in the measured cadence of someone used to being transcribed. You give the name off the parish list, Alice, widow, because lies stick better when laminated by bureaucracy. He buys a picture, invites you to a corner booth, curtained in faded arras depicting Susanna and the elders. Motif chosen, you suspect, for inspirational rather than moral reasons. Conversation starts with the price of a loom, essential for fixing dye. You mention the scarlet thread you used on the notary's sleeve, proving you know your textiles. He's impressed, or bored enough to feign it, and offers to hire you as quality inspector for his next shipment, meaning you travel to Sandwich, inspect bales, sample local hospitality. Payment, more than a month's earnings here, half now, half on return. The catch: departure in 3 days, documents sealed tonight. You hedge, claiming obligations. He produces a sealed letter, wax bearing the same castle stamp you saw on his chain. Says it's authorization to negotiate on his behalf. Drops it intentionally. Lets you glimpse Latin phrases about femina diligence and cargo manifests. Medieval business loves paperwork, the way fleas love hems. You're being invited to wear both. You promise an answer by tomorrow noon. Tuck the letter into your pouch beside the notary's indulgence token. Now you own 2 kinds of absolution, one spiritual, one mercantile. He pours more wine, fingers brushing yours. Standard procedure. You let contact linger, pricing curiosity, then withdraw before promises crystallize. Outside the curtain tableau, the fiddler switches to a pavane, dancers slow to a stately sway, morality reasserted by tempo. Aldridge excuses himself to check ledgers, leaves you with the pitcher and a whisper. Southwark rewards the decisive. You exhale, realize you've been holding breath since the boat ride. Travel means papers, protection, possibly plague along the coast, but also a chance to vanish from familiar ledgers. Your debts, your landlord, your yellow-hooded past. You picture the letter's wax seal cooling against your thigh, castle links branding fate into skin. Historians still debate whether medieval women could own economic agency outside brothels or marriages. You're negotiating a third option, stamped and sealed. The dog yawns, unimpressed by geography. You drain your cup, taste alum, pepper, and something metallic. Maybe opportunity, maybe merely the pitcher's tin. Either way, tomorrow's bell will find you already awake, counting costs in languages you only half understand. You leave the cardinal's hat before the pitcher empties, because clarity is easier to maintain while knees still obey. Outside, Southwark's fog has thickened into wool that smells of river and distant tallow smoke. Even the moon keeps to its cloud blanket. The dog pads beside you, claws clicking on plank walkways, laid like bandages over the marsh. You need quiet to weigh Aldridge's offer, so you head toward the priory's outer garden, where monks grow herbs and, allegedly, discretion. The gate stands ajar. Someone always forgets to bar it after vespers, and you slip inside, footsteps muffled by lavender hedges trimmed as neatly as tonsures. Here the city's roar dulls to a rumor, replaced by the soft argument of crickets and your own pulse. You sit on a stone bench still warm from daylight, unfold the merchant's letter by candlelight, siphoned from a monk's window high above. Latin swims. You catch quantities. 52 sacks of wool, duty paid, permission to cross at Dover, and the name Alice de Winton, Aldridge's scribbled addition beside femina diligence. He's already forged your participation, confident you'll say yes. Medieval contracts often begin before consent. You're not shocked, just calculating exit fees. A rustle. A novice sneaking peas from the infirmary plot freezes when he sees you, candle stub in one hand, guilt in the other. you raise a finger to lips. He nods, vanishes among sage plants. Monks and prostitutes share a currency of secrecy. Each protects the other's after-hours transactions. You pocket the letter, breathe herb air sharp enough to scrub conscience. The priory's bell tolls once. An hour passed. Compline reminder that time here belongs to God, leased to merchants only by daylight. You wonder if agreeing to travel means stepping outside, divine accounting, or deeper inside it. Either way, tolls will be collected. Brother Ribs noses your ankle, impatient with metaphysics. You stand, brush lavender crumbs from skirts, and retrace steps through the gate now latched. Someone's penance completed. Back on the planks you notice fresh hoofprints in moonlit mud, heading toward the stews. Knights, maybe, or customers. Aldridge plans to meet. Big deals often begin in small bedrooms. You file the observation, because surveillance is free and frequently profitable. Instead of returning to the Cardinal's Hat, you seek the 24-hour bakehouse near the pillory, where bakers obey no curfew because souls hunger for midnight salvation and actual bread. You buy a penny loaf still singing from the oven, tear it open, steam writing brief prayers into fog. Inside, you hide the indulgence token, bread as portable tabernacle, then feed the crust to the dog. If you flee town tomorrow, you'll need traveling provisions. If you stay, you'll need forgiveness. Either way, carbs help. A passing watchman eyes you, decides a woman feeding her dog lacks threat or bribe potential, and lumbers on. Historians still debate whether medieval authorities truly controlled the night. You're living proof they take bribes or boredom breaks. You lean against the warm bakehouse wall, feel yeast and tiredness rise together. Aldridge's deadline hovers. 3 days, 2 nights, 1 decision. Yet exhaustion weights eyelids like coins on dead men's eyes. You whisper a bargain to whichever saint handles crossroads. Give me a sign before matins. Make it cheap. Make it clear. The only answer is the soft collapse of dough inside ovens and the distant bark of a goose startled by nothing. You take it as neutrality. Permission to choose. Bread eaten, you turn toward the ferry, toward walls, toward a bed that may or may not still be rented by dawn. Every step feels like ink drying on parchment you haven't yet read. The ferry back across the Thames is quieter. Even the river seems to respect the hush between Compline and Matins. Watt's replacement polls. A boy with one functioning eye and a voice still breaking accepts your last English penny, too sleepy to haggle. You share the boat with a nun escorting a shuttered lantern. She's transporting holy chrism, or maybe smuggling olive oil for the infirmary. The cask smells equally sanctified and edible. She whispers a blessing your way, eyes flicking to your veil, your dog, the flower on your sleeve. You bow, accepting grace on credit. Brother Ribs lies across your feet, snoring softly, paws twitching through a dream of unlimited breadcrumbs. Fog parts just enough to reveal city walls, black against lesser dark, torches spaced like hesitant punctuation. Historians call gates liminal spaces. You call them Tuesday nights with extra bribes. Inside, Aldgate's guard expects you. Word travels faster than feet. You pay with the sailors' gossip about Marseille plague ships. The guard listens, terrified, waves you through without stamping your face on any register. Survival tip. Fear outrigs greed after midnight. Streets are empty, except for a distant procession of penitents flagging themselves with nettles, a sound like dry rain. You keep to shadows, avoiding their route. Holiness is contagious and occasionally violent. Your loft ladder creaks louder than memory. Each rung announces trespass. Inside, moonlight stripes the floor through warped shutters, illuminating Master Corbett's latest innovation, a new lock on your storage chest. He's also left a note ink, blurred by roof drip, demanding last week's rent by sunrise, or measures will be taken. Measures could mean eviction, could mean sheriff, could mean a night in the compter where women pay debts in the currency he prefers. You tuck Aldridge's florin deeper into your pouch, wondering if landlords accept foreign coin at sword point. Too wired for sleep, you climb to the rooftop because air tastes less indebted up high. City spreads below like a scatter of broken rosary beads, some catching light, some lost in gutter shadow. You sit on the ridge beam, feet dangling above pigeon nests, and light the small clay pipe the juggler gave you, packed with hemp the color of dried hope. One long draw. Hold, release, stars blur into friendly ovals. Somewhere a bell tolls too, probably the priory where you left herbal scents and unanswered prayers. You replay Aldridge's proposition. 52 sacks of wool, Dover Crossing, your name already inked beside castle stamps. Freedom wrapped in bureaucracy, the medieval equivalent of a gilded cage if cages came with travel per diem. Exhale again. Smoke drifts toward the cathedral spire, dissolving into larger darkness. You wonder if the vanished pilgrim once stood here, weighing similar choices before relics and creditors tugged him underground. Footsteps on the ladder, soft, deliberate. You freeze, pipe hidden, hand on the knife you keep mostly for cheese. A head appears. Alice, hair unbound, eyes reflecting moon like wet stone. She climbs up, sits without invitation, offers a flask. You swap, hemp for honeyed wine, medieval barter at altitude. She whispers that Corbett is collecting interest tonight from girls behind the poultry stalls. She escaped by hiding in a grain bin, now smells like tomorrow's porridge. You tell her about the trip, the forged name, the pearls you never owned. She listens, then says, "Go." Southwark will swallow her, but the road might spit you out richer. Advice from a friend who knows every back alley confessional in the city feels like indulgence without the priest. You share silence until the pipe dies and the wine empties. She descends first, squeezes your wrist once. Solidarity in lieu of amen. Alone again, you decide. Signs are overrated. Choices are just fear wearing boots. You whisper yes to no one, pocket the cooling ember, and climb down ready to pack before dawn, leaving Corbet a lock to pick and a roof to rent to the next almost survivor. Dawn finds you already awake, possessions bundled into the same shawl you wore yesterday, linen shift, spare veil, the notary's indulgence token now sharing space with Aldridge's letter and 2 crusts of bread hard enough to double as dice. Brother Ribs watches, head tilted at the audacity of luggage smaller than a dog. You consider leaving the chest to Corbet. Let him pick the lock and discover only fleas and a single yellow hood you no longer need. But loyalty to future revenge wins. Instead, you scratch a note in charcoal. Gone to seek honest work, back when hell freezes. Medieval curses taste better in writing. You pin it under the door wedge where he'll find it while demanding rent from empty air. Historians love evidence of defiance. You just provided a primary source. Down the ladder, last rung squeaks like a mouse finalizing its will. The street is still bruise-colored, mist rising off cobbles like souls uncertain of destination. You head for the river, because ferries run earliest there, driven by tides indifferent to human clocks. Along the way, you pause at the bake shop's delivery hatch, trade 1 crust for a hot flat cake spread with yesterday's honey breakfast, and bribe for the ferry boy. He remembers you, or at least the dog, and pulls off immediately, no questions asked before sunrise. Mid-river, the sky blushes rose. You watch the city shrink into a jagged silhouette, each spire a promise or a threat, depending on whether you're arriving or leaving. You're leaving, which makes every outline softer, like looking backward through bathhouse steam. Scholars call this liminality, standing between one identity and the next. You call it Tuesday with better odds. On the south bank, Aldridge's factor waits beside a cart, already half-loaded with wool sacks pressed tight as sins. He introduces himself as Jenkin, speaks in percentages and departure times, hands you a felt hat sporting the castle badge, uniform for the road. You don it. The dog sniffs approval. Jenkin counts you as cargo. 1 woman, 1 cur, negligible weight against 52 sacks that smell of sheep and coin. He offers breakfast, weak ale, and a strip of salt beef that could serve as architectural support. You chew, imagining it's Corbett's patience, and feel better. Loading finishes, cartwheels creak like old confessions beginning their journey to absolution or market, synonymous here. You climb onto the sack perch, feet dangling above axle ruts, and realize you've traded rooftop ridge beams for wool bales. Different vista. Same balancing act. The road unrolls southward, mist clinging to hedgerows where dew beads on spiderwebs like tiny indulgences. Each bump presses florins against your thigh, foreign metal reminding you that economic migration began centuries before economists named it. You pass a wayside cross where someone has tied fresh rags. Prayers for travelers or laundry forgotten, medieval piety and practicality share stitches. You add a strip torn from the hem you scorched at the bathhouse, a small offering to momentum. Jenkin notes the gesture, nods approval. Superstition is the one currency that never devalues. Behind you, London's bells begin prime, scattered and futile, like parents calling a child who has already climbed the fence. Ahead lie Dover's cliffs, the Channel's grey lottery, and Calais where English wool becomes continental gold, or so Jenkin promises. You pat the letter inside your bodice, feel wax imprint the castle into your skin, branding or blessing, too early to tell. For now you ride, dog curled on your lap, counting sheep smells instead of debts, every turn of the wheels writing. Elsewhere, across the manuscript of your name. By midday, the road has turned from packed earth to rutted clay, each wheel groove a miniature moat where rainwater breeds tiny empires of mosquitoes. You swat them away, imagining their whines as miniature creditors demanding interest and blood. Jenkin drives steadily, whistling a tune that sounds like 2 different songs arguing. Wool sacks bounce, releasing warm linoleum with every jolt. Your clothes will smell of sheep for weeks, a perfume respectable married women spend good money to avoid. You don't mind. It's honest compared to tallow smoke and borrowed lavender. At a fork we pass a shrine hacked into a hollow oak. Inside, a crudely carved virgin, face smoothed by centuries of desperate palms. Jenkin tosses a penny. You add the second crust of bread, figuring Mary might appreciate supper that doesn't bleed. Historians still argue whether roadside shrines were pilgrimage stops or pagan holdovers. You vote both, depending on need. We stop at a stream to water horses. While Jenkin checks hooves, you study the sealed letter, tilting it to sunlight until wax edges glow like small ramparts. You can't read most Latin, but recognize numerals, 52 sacks, duty 4 pence per, permit dated yesterday. Funny how paperwork travels faster than people yet arrives later than hope. You wonder what happens if the tally arrives short, whether femina diligence becomes convenient scapegoat. The dog snaps at mayflies, each bite a tiny act of optimism. Jenkin remarks, "We'll reach Rochester by dusk. Cathedral bells. There can be heard 3 fields away, time audible long before walls appear." He offers advice when we lodge tonight. Speak little, smile less. Wool attracts both coin and cutthroats. You nod, understanding that discretion is gender-neutral currency, though women often pay higher exchange rates. Afternoon heat turns the cart into a rolling oven. Wool exhales humid sheep breath that sticks hair to neck. You fan yourself with the felt hat, castle badge winking mockery. Along the verge, reapers pause scything to watch us pass, eyes tracking sacks the way children track sweets. One calls out asking if we carry Flemish cloth. Jenkin answers only, English grown, God's own, which satisfies piety if not curiosity. Medieval trade routes are gossip highways. By tomorrow, taverns will know a woman in a castle hat guards wool worth more than a knight's ransom. You consider dirt smearing the badge, but decide visibility also deters amateurs. Professional thieves prefer anonymity, same as you. Ahead, Rochester's keep rises stone gray against a bruised sky, banner snapping like a debtor's patience. You straighten shoulders, feel the letter crinkle, wax softening against skin, warm enough to remind you, seals can melt under pressure, same as resolve. Rochester's gatekeeper barely glances at the letter. He's more interested in the dog, which he claims looks part mastiff and therefore owes a ferocious beast toll. You pay with the sailor's story of dancing plague rats, embellished until the guard's eyes widen enough to wave the coin. Jenkin winks. Proof narrative is negotiable currency. Inside, the city smells of river reeds and hot stone cooling after sunset. We lodge at the Sign of the Pelican, an inn whose signboard depicts the bird stabbing her own breast to feed chicks with blood. Medieval hospitality marketing at its most unsettling. The yard bustles with Flemish clothiers drinking Rhenish wine and arguing about weft counts in 3 languages, none of which you speak fluently, but all of which recognize the clink of silver. You stable the dog on the wool cart, bribe a groom with rosemary from your sleeve. He sniffs, smiles, promises vigilance. Wool smells stronger in enclosed stone, like money trying to escape its sack. Supper is eel stew, thick enough to stand a spoon, served in bowls glazed with a green that looks healthier than the food. Jenkin joins a table of drivers. You sit with 2 Flemish women who introduce themselves as sisters exporting lace to London. They admire your castle badge, ask if you're of the company. You improvise, widowed factor, learning the route, which wins sympathetic clucks and practical advice. Never trust the tollkeeper who quotes scripture. Always count sacks after ferry crossings. Carry needles in your hat brim for emergency mending or emergency eyes. One sister lowers her voice. A shipment of alum vanished last month near Canterbury, rumored stolen by pirates who sell to Venetian glassmakers. She hints the thieves bribe drivers for information on convoy schedules. You smile, file the warning, wondering if Jenkin is auditioning you or auditioning for them. Medieval supply chains are necklaces of secrets. Tug one bead, others roll. After supper, the innkeeper offers shared beds, straw pallets in the loft, gender segregated by verbal declaration rather than anatomy. You choose a corner, spread your shawl like a claim, and pretend to sleep while eel stew conducts negotiations with your stomach. Around you, strangers snore in 4 languages. The chorus sounds like a parliament of broken bagpipes. You finger the letter inside your bodice, wax now pliable from body heat, castle imprint branding your ribs. If alum pirates want schedules, this document is both map and ransom. You consider copying the permit, forging a later date, creating decoy cargo skills picked up mending sleeves and lives. But parchment costs money, and forgery buys time only if backed by muscle you lack. Outside, cathedral bells ring. Compline, each stroke a slow hammer shaping the night. You decide to watch Jenkin tomorrow. If he meets strangers with counting boards, you'll invent a sick relative and bolt. If not, perhaps opportunity outweighs risk. Somewhere below, the dog barks once, dream or warning, then settles. You breathe with the snorers. Let their rhythm row you toward a decision you hope looks like destiny when daylight arrives. Morning fog lies so thick the Pelican's yard could be afloat on its own cloud. Horses emerge like carved prows of ships invented by someone who's only heard rumors of the sea. Jenkin greets you with bread and hard cheese, eyes clear, no telltale redness of clandestine meetings. You chew, watching for micro-expressions. Does he count sacks more carefully today? Does he glance toward the stable gateway too often? Nothing. Only normal pre-departure bustle. Still, you decide to test. Mention you dreamed of pirates counting alum barrels in Latin. He laughs, says pirates prefer languages they can swear in, not conjugate. Relief trickles. Tepid. We load the cart. The groom returns your dog, -1 rosemary sprig, but plus a new collar rope, braided with 2 brass links from a broken harness. You thank him. Slip him the last English penny. Brass jingles like tiny bells announcing loyalty or bribery, hard to tell. Road conversation stays practical. Wheel ruts, weather, likelihood of Dover cliffs visible before midday. Jenkin produces a small book of hours, pages edged with wool fluff, and begins reciting psalms under his breath each time we pass a shrine. Piety or habit, it suggests a man who trusts routine more than profit, comforting either way. At midday, we stop where the road crests a hill. Below spreads the channel, gray sheet stitched to gray sky by needles of rain. Dover's castle perches like a stone crown on the coast's brow, white cliffs glaring bright enough to hurt. You feel the world widen, air salted, lungs suddenly larger. Jenkin points out the port, 3 Genoese carracks rocking at anchor, same flag as the sailor with pepper rumors. Coincidence clings to you like damp wool. He notes they arrived last night, seeking English fleeces, paying in good bullion. Your stomach tightens. Bullion means weight, means pirates, means documents like yours acquire targets. We descend toward the port, traffic thickening, sheep drovers, pack mules carrying tin, women with baskets of gloves for sailors. At the customs house, a clerk waves us to the inspection bay. Jenkin hands over the letter, wax seal now cooled to brittle amber. The clerk breaks it, scans contents, compares tally to actual sacks. You hold breath, counting along, 51, 52, relieved when numbers align. He stamps the permit, but pauses. Factor named here. Alice de Winton, present. Jenkin gestures to you, eyes turn. You nod. Manage a smile that feels like curtsying in mud. The clerk studies your hat badge, your dog, your calloused fingers, decides women factors are odd but not impossible, and initials the margin. You exhale. Realize you've crossed an official threshold, from rumor to record. Medieval bureaucracy writes in ink, but erases with blood. Your name is now in both. We proceed toward the quay where Aldridge waits beside a warehouse flying the castle banner. He greets you with merchant warmth. Calculated, brisk, then murmurs. The Genoese have offered top price if we unload before prime tomorrow. Tide turns at dawn. Decision looms like the cliffs behind, bright, inevitable, and sharp at the edges. Aldridge leads you into the warehouse, stone cold and echoing like an empty church. The Genoese buyers stand beside a table arranged as a makeshift altar to commerce, scales, inkpot, and a silver-gilt reliquary box, no bigger than your fist, presumably packed with pepper or private coin. Their leader, Captain Riccio, bows with naval flourish, eyes flicking over you as if weighing cargo he hadn't ordered. When Aldridge introduces you as our diligent factor, Riccio's eyebrow arcs like a sail catching wind. You curtsy just deep enough to hint respect without submission. Medieval trade is theater. Tonight, you're both cast and collateral. They discuss price per sack, while clerks translate between English pounds and Genoese lire, numbers fluttering like moths around a lantern. You listen, noting Riccio slips once, mentions alum shortage in Venice, confirming the Flemish sister's pirate tale. Jenkins stands behind you, silent, hand resting casually near his belt knife, either protective or possessive, hard to gauge. Aldridge opens a sack, pulls out a fleece, invites Riccio to test quality. The captain buries his hand deep, rubs fibers, nods approval, then drops a surprise. He'll pay an extra 20% if delivery happens tonight, off port, to avoid English export duty. The warehouse air thickens. You feel everyone calculate risk versus profit in heartbeats loud as drumbeats. English customs law requires stamped permits for overseas loading. Off-port transfer equals smuggling, punishable by confiscation and, unofficially, by hanging the small fry while fining the big. Aldridge's eyes gleam. 20% would cover losses if half the cargo drowned. He turns to you, asks if the factor's seal can certify shipside delivery. Backdated an hour before customs closed. Medieval documents bend time the way priests bend logic. You hold the power to stamp approval or refusal. You stall, claiming you need to recount sacks with Jenkins outside. In the yard you whisper, off port means no customs witness, meaning if pirates intercept, no legal protection. Jenkins shrugs. Pirates or gallows, pick your weather. You weigh options, refuse, keep everything legal, likely lose Aldrich's favor and your ride home. Accept, stamp the letter, gamble on darkness and luck. The dog noses your ankle, reminding you hunger travels regardless of morality. You remember the parchment bread wrapped around the indulgence token. Body and soul both need smuggling sometimes. Decision crystallizes, you'll stamp, but demand payment up front in small silver, split between you and Jenkins, so no single sack holds all risk. Back inside you present terms, certified delivery before prime. Payment now, captain provides armed boatmen as escort. Riccio smiles, agrees. Aldridge hesitates, then nods. Greed outweighing caution as usual. The clerk prepares 2 copies. You press the seal into warm wax. Castle imprint crisp as new coin. 1 copy stays with Aldridge, 1 with Riccio, your name binding each. Pen scratches feel like thread sewing you into history's hem, visible only if someone turns the fabric over. Outside, tide lapse pilings, counting down to midnight. You exhale, taste salt and consequence, and tell yourself stories are currency you can spend later, provided there is a later. Midnight loading happens in whispers and grunts, sacks heaved from cart to skiff, each thud a heartbeat you feel in your ribs. Torches gutter, throwing copper light over faces slick with effort and fog. You stand on the quay, tally in hand, counting every sack twice, because numbers are easier to trust than people. Jenkins works beside you, knife now visible. Deterrent or desperation, hard to tell. Riccio's boatmen wear no livery. Anonymity is armor when smuggling. They move with naval rhythm, but one pauses too long, eyes measuring you, like cargo that could walk. You meet his gaze. Let your hand rest on the hilt of your little cheese knife. Ridiculous, but uncertainty is a weapon too. The dog paces the dock, low growls harmonizing with rope creaks, echo off warehouse walls like distant approval. Somewhere beyond torchlight waves slap holes, counting coins no one has yet stolen. When the final sack slides below deck, Riccio presents a purse. Silver pennies, weight verified on portable scales. Aldridge divides coins on a barrelhead, half to Jenkins, half to you, minus 10%, insurance against God, which he pockets with pious shrug. Medieval risk management always includes deity surcharge. You transfer your share into a leather pouch tied inside your skirt, feeling the sudden drag of solvency. Riccio offers passage across the channel to witness safe delivery, hinting at further employment. You decline, claiming obligations in Calais markets. Truth is, you prefer solid ground when stakes drown. He bows, kisses your hand, pearls of seawater cold on his lips. Blessing or baptism, too late to parse. The skiff pushes off, oars rising like synchronized prayers, swallowed by black water until only torch glints on ripples prove they existed. You exhale, realize you've been holding breath since the first sack moved. Dawn is a rumor when you and Jenkin guide the empty cart toward the customs house to file completed export papers, backdated, sealed, technically legal now that cargo sits beyond English sand. Clerks stamp without inspecting, parchment smoke masks sleeplessness. Outside, gulls wheel overhead, screaming like creditors who arrived too late. You feel the city's weight lift, replaced by lightness suspiciously like fear's aftermath. Jenkin claps your shoulder, first familiarity he's risked, and says, "We'll start back after Prime." You nod, though back is negotiable. Aldridge mentioned London, but your pouch whispers alternatives. In the harbor, the Genoese carracks still ride at anchor, probably unaware their captain conducts midnight commerce on the side. You wonder if Riccio will reach Venice, if pirates sniff alum and wool in the same breath, if your name on a wax seal will surface like flotsam after storm. Medieval fortunes float on such uncertainties. You've just learned to swim in them. For now you trudge toward an inn bed, dog at heel, pouch heavier than conscience, lighter than destiny, every step riding elsewhere, deeper into road dust. You wake beneath an unfamiliar ceiling, beams dark as ship ribs, and for a moment forget which port owns you. Then the pouch's weight on your hip answers. Dover. Dawn after clandestine shipping, purse clinking like tiny chapel bells. Jenkins still snores on the pallet opposite, shoes placed neatly beneath, habit of a man who slept in stables more often than beds. You dress quietly, letting him dream of ledgers balanced in his favor, and slip outside where air tastes of salt and new chances. The harbor bustles, nets flung like silver sentences, fishwives chanting prices, half in French, half in the universal language of haggle. You buy a cup of warm almond milk, luxury bought with a single smuggled penny, and sit on a capstan to watch gulls steal breakfast from the unprepared. Medieval mornings are honest. Everyone scavenges, just at different altitudes. Aldrich finds you there, face flushed with success and sleeplessness. He hands over a second, smaller purse, bonus for efficient factor, minus another 10% for God, plus a new sealed letter authorizing you to negotiate wool purchases in Calais markets. You've been promoted from escort to agent inside 12 hours. The letter names you Alice de Winton, lawful attorney, ink still shiny. Power, you realize, can be printed like indulgences, provided someone richer holds the quill. You accept, because refusal ends the story, but acceptance turns the page. He mentions a ship leaving on the afternoon tide, cabin space available if you don't mind sharing with baled silks, aromatic, inert, unlikely to snore. You promise an answer by noon, needing time to weigh anchor against roots you never actually had. Historians still debate when medieval women first acted as independent merchants. You're too busy becoming footnote to consult them. You walk the pier's length, dog chasing gulls, purse swinging like a pendulum measuring choices. Option 1, return to London, pay Corbett, reclaim loft life, predictable as fleas. Option 2, cross to Calais, trade wool, learn numbers larger than debts, risk pirates, plague, and profit. You stop at the jetty's end, where water deepens from green to black, color of wax before it seals fate. The channel wind slaps your veil against cheeks, stinging like unpaid promises. You think of Alice, of the notary's insomnia, of Aldrich's easy smile hiding ledgers. No one back home knows your location. You could vanish into continental ledgers, emerge years later with capital enough to buy respectability, or at least a house with unleaky thatch. Medieval social mobility exists mostly in margins. You're standing on one such margin, toes over water. Brother Ribs noses your ankle, impatient with metaphysics. You drain the almond milk, taste sediment of decision, and turn toward the agent's office to book passage. Somewhere behind, London's bells ring terse, but their sound is swallowed by wind and distance, a clock you no longer synchronize with. Ahead, tide pulls like a giant inhale, ready to swallow or carry, depending on how well you swim inside stories you write, but don't yet know the ending to. The tide has made its choice for you, the ship's timbers creaking a lullaby beneath your feet. You linger at the rail, letting the rhythm rock your shoulders loose, letting the salt wind comb through hair still scented with lanolin and almond milk. The dog is already curled on a coil of rope, nose tucked under tail, trusting the motion the way you are learning to trust uncertainty. Each wave that kisses the hull exhales a little of your tension. You breathe with it, in on the lift, out on the fall, until your ribs feel unbuckled, spacious. Behind you, England shrinks to a watercolor smear, cliffs the color of old bones, sky washing into sea. Ahead, only a pale seam where tomorrow waits, unwritten. The purse against your hip is no longer a burden, but a heartbeat, steady, reminding you that value is something you can carry, not just owe. You close your eyes, feeling the cool spray settle like blessings you didn't expect. Somewhere in the rigging, a sailor hums, soft and off-key, a hymn to steady hands and forgiving depths. You borrow the tune, hum along, letting it blur the edges of every story you've told, every name you've worn. There is nothing to pack, nothing to prove, only the slow sway counting down the distance between who you were at sunrise and who you might be by starrise. You match your heartbeat to the boat's lumbering pulse. Slower, slower, until thought unspools into simple sensation. Wood, wind, warmth of dog against your ankle, taste of salt on your lips like a promise kept. The horizon evens out to a calm line, inviting your gaze to rest, inviting your eyelids to drift. You let them. The ship carries you. The night cradles the ship. And you, small, brave, breathing, float inside it all, safe for this moment, heading somewhere unnamed, somewhere quietly possible. Sweet dreams.